D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. We hope you are having a wonderful start to your Tuesday. How's everybody doing today?
Wonderful.
Outstanding.
Just wonderful.
Willie, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Outstanding.
2 days after the marathon. No, 3 days after the marathon.
I actually,
Feel good?
I feel I'm recovering pretty well.
Okay.
I feel like the legs are back to not being that sore, so I'm feeling good about that part.
Before we get to our obligatory Mike Vrabel segment to start the show,
It never stops.
because it never stops, we do want to update a story we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, we discussed Diego Pavia being invited to Baltimore Ravens rookie minicamp. Adam Schefter reported earlier today that the Ravens are indeed signing Pavia to a 3-year deal. He says, quote, Pavia was supposed to try out this weekend, but the Ravens signed him in advance. So congratulations to Diego Pavia.
They were listening to the show, and we kind of hyped him up, and they were thinking, why are we just bringing this guy in to try out? We need to sign him to a contract. So, but no, that's great for Diego.
You think we sold him on him?
I think so. I'm going to believe we sold them.
They're just like, hey, D-Mace is saying this,
Exactly.
so
I vouch for
obviously
him.
it works.
Derek still has some sway.
Yeah, just
in
a
that
tad
organization.
bit. Not much, just a tad bit. But I think this is good. But still, the goal remains for him is to make the team. Now, them signing him to a contract, it's good in a sense, but he has to make the team. So, but congratulations to him for getting a contract to an NFL team, and hopefully he can go in there and turn some heads, because ultimately that's what it's about, just being able to get somebody's attention, somebody in that building fighting for you.
I chuckled when I saw this from ESPN NFL Nation Ravens reporter Jamison Hensley describing Pavia as, quote, one of the most accomplished and controversial players in college football. He's controversial. It reminds me of like commercials from the Jerry Springer show.
But see, that's and that is going to be ultimately, like, at the end of the day, if people are going to continue to judge him based upon that, controversial quarterback. And I'm sure if he could take it all back, he would. But that's one of those things where, if you don't have the measurables, and there's, some in the building fighting for you, and then some that are not, these are the type of things that sort of tilt the scale one way or another, not having that controversial part attached to your name.
All right, let's get to our obligatory Mike Vrabel opening segment of the show, because every time I just want to stop talking about it, something happens that we must discuss. And the New York Post, they did it again. And here's the funny part. The New York Post clearly knows that this is driving traffic. So anytime they can get a headline with Mike Vrabel in it, they're going to. Here's the latest. Mike Vrabel jets to Salt Lake City mid-NFL draft, buys wife apology present after Dianna Russini photo scandal. From the New York Post, quote, Mike Vrabel was spotted buying a gift, apparently for his wife, in Utah, just days after Page Six published cozy photos of him and sports reporter Dianna Russini at a bar in 2020. As seen in new pics exclusively obtained by Page Six, the New England Patriots head coach bought the present, believed to be for Jen Vrabel, at the Salt Lake City International Airport on Saturday. Mike, who was still wearing his wedding ring.
So brutal.
Mike,
Oh my goodness!
It
It's just going downhill.
Hold
very
on.
fast.
I haven't even gotten to the best part.
It's cringy.
I haven't even gotten to the best part. Quote,
Oh.
Mike, who was still wearing his wedding ring, browsed a store called Hip and Humble and landed on a baby blue sweatsuit. Because nothing screams, I am sorry that I carried on an affair for at least 6 years, like buying your scorned wife a hoodie from the airport.
It it's just remarkable how this story continues to feed itself.
Oh, there's more. It's not just the photos. We'll get to the more in a minute.
But okay, he goes shopping for her allegedly. He goes shopping for
I
her.
love that part. Believed to be for his wife.
to be.
But
We
then
don't
they
know.
show him.
Believed to be.
They show him picking up a fleece baby blue tracksuit from the airport. If you flew all the way to Salt Lake City to go to the airport to buy a baby please forgive me gift, you don't need to be in it, man. That is just bad. And I know that wasn't the case, but the way they're setting up this story, man, it just makes them look worse by the minute.
That was
it's bad.
cringeworthy. That's stooping to a new low there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
really,
bad.
do we care about that?
I
Come on.
will say this.
Come on.
The airport gift is the absolute bare minimum gift. Okay.
I don't know if I've ever done that.
I remember. Am I right or am I right?
I'm not a
airport
great
gift.
gift giver, but I usually don't go to that.
Airport gift is you're walking past a store, you be like, oh, I think they'll like that. Let me pick it up, and you go. It's like a trinket.
Here is a personal example. I never bought a sweatsuit for my scorned wife because I have been 100% faithful to my beautiful wife. Hello, honey, if you're listening. I remember a couple of years ago, my wife, son, and I were going to a family friend's beach house. A friend of my dad's, a longtime friend of my dad's, has a beach house in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and she was kind enough to invite us to stay there for a week. And we're at the airport, and we're like, man, we should probably get her a gift, right? Like, she's doing this really nice thing for us. We're not bringing anything. So we went to the airport shop and bought like a box of Goo Goo clusters. Like, thank you for letting us use your beach house. Here's some chocolate that we clearly bought at the last minute from the airport. Like, it is the bare minimum.
Yeah, you might as well get a card.
I mean, what's
in that
worse,
case.
the airport gift or the drugstore gift? Like, if you walk into a CVS or Walgreens, is that lower than the airport gift? Because at least
Are you going in there specifically for the gift
Yes.
to
Yes,
Walgreens?
exactly.
Or are you buying yourself some Skittles?
Like, if you're
and you're
gonna
like,
go to
oh,
Walgreens, wouldn't you just go to a better gift store? That, or like, I'm in Walgreens. Oh wait, I got to get a gift. What can I get?
So what you said is Walgreens is worse. Because
If you're choosing to go to Walgreens for the
For
gift,
gift.
that's worse. That's worse.
I think
you don't
the-
go to Walgreens.
I
to
think
get
the
a gift.
drugstore gift,
If you're in
might
Walgreens
be below the
and
airport
it
gift.
dawns on you need a gift, then okay, that's the scenario, and that's still not good.
I might have to readjust my rankings here. I might have to
Oh, my
put the
goodness.
drugstore gift underneath
we
the
do
airport
not
gift.
mean to offend those that shop at Walgreens or CVS for gifts.
Gunner says, this has to burn Vrabel to his core. He doesn't like talking to media after winning games. Imagine knowing every single move he makes from now on is going to be caught on camera. And that is absolutely
He's
true.
gonna be watching his back. He gonna be like, who is that? Who's that? That man gonna be paranoid.
He's going to be like Rockwell. I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Yes.
And it gets better.
I ain't got no privacy.
It gets better from here because it wasn't just the photo. Okay. It wasn't just the photos from the New York Post. And I want to preface the next piece of this story with this disclaimer. If the people who are putting the time and energy into uncovering Spotify playlists shared by Dianna Russini from 2022 put that same time and energy into things that actually matter, imagine what we could accomplish as a society. Okay? Just remember that. So David, hold on, let me find it. David Cavucci posted on X last night. At the moment, it has 13.3 million views. Dianna Russini made a Spotify playlist called Turn in the Page, no G in turning, Turn in the Page, that she shared with a user named Mike on December 19th, 2022, which just so happens to coincide with a 4-game Titans losing streak. I believe that was amid the 7-game Titans losing streak to end the season.
So
And-
the playlist did not spark anything.
No, the playlist did not spark anything. And this playlist is all over the place.
Wow.
I have I have some questions about this playlist.
Oh, you actually looked at the songs in the playlist?
Yes, I looked at the songs on the playlist. Okay. First of all, on the same playlist as Raise Your Glass by Pink is Last Resort by Papa Roach. In no world should those two artists be on the same playlist.
Is it at the beginning and end? Is that the last song?
I mean, here are some of the artists who are on this playlist. Beyonce.
Why don't we just go down the list?
Okay, sure.
Because
do you want me to read the whole playlist?
Well, how
Well, how many songs is it? Yeah.
The screenshot has 15 songs on it.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
quickly.
Let's
Boom,
go down
hit 'em.
because
Okay.
let me just preface this. I appreciate a really good playlist, and I like playlists that go all around
I
the
get it.
spectrum. I
Yeah.
want variety.
Okay,
in my
one
playlist.
texter, by the way, says the airport gift is worse than the drugstore gift because A, you've already left. You're not even at the airport for the gift. You're there to leave. B, same quality as drugstore gift, but 10 times the cost.
You got a point there.
That's actually
Fair.
That
true.
is
Very
fair.
true.
Good take. Good take.
I'm going to work on this over the course of the show. Airport gift, drugstore gift. Okay, here is the playlist, the alleged playlist called Turnin' the Page, allegedly shared by Dianna Russini for someone named Mike in December of 2022.
It could be anyone named Mike.
There
Could
are
be. There's a
so
lot
many
of Mikes.
Mikes.
There's a lot of
Okay.
Mikes.
Yeah.
And I hope I pronounced some of these artists correctly.
Let's do it.
Cuff It by Beyonce.
Okay.
Big
Cuff it.
Energy by Lado. Break My
Good song.
Soul by Beyonce.
That used to be our theme song, by the
Yeah,
way.
you're
Big
right.
energy.
There's a certain kind of energy, a big energy. There's a letter in between that, big D energy. Perhaps that's what she's talking about. I don't know. Cuff It by Beyonce, Big Energy by Lado, Break My Soul by Beyonce. Time out. I do not like playlists with multiple songs from the same artist.
And if you're gonna do it, spread them out.
Yeah,
Spread them out a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spread out.
That's
One-
a little bit.
1 to 3.
We're gonna dock the points. For
Yes,
that.
we're gonna. I mean, unless you're on shuffle, and then you never know.
Right.
But the way it's ordered, 2 Beyonce songs in the first 3. No, thank you.
Shaky.
Okay. House Party by Sam Hunt.
Okay.
My Love by Route 94 and Jess Glynn. Pump It Louder by Tiesto and the Black Eyed Peas. Raise Your Glass by Pink.
Uh-huh.
Bass Down Low by Dev and the Cataracts. Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Last Resort by Papa Roach. Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. Photograph by Def Leppard.
Oh.
Not Nickelback. Def Leppard.
Okay.
God of Thunder by Kiss. Dance the Night Away by Van Halen. And Renegade by Styx.
Man,
Renegade,
that's an
nice.
eclectic group.
We are moving across the spectrum.
Yeah, she is across the spectrum on that
One
one.
texter
boy.
says, where does the hospital gift shop rank in this debate? I mean, keep it coming. I mean, the hospital.
No, hospital was different.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hospital gift isn't as much of like I'm phoning this in, like the
Yeah.
airport gift and the drugstore gift. But,
But
what do you make of the playlist,
Well,
Willie?
I thought when I saw the title of the playlist, Turn the Page.
No Bob Seger.
That's
Zero
what
Bob Seger.
I was like, where's Bob Seger?
Zero Bob Seger. No
I thought
turning
that was
the
going to be
page.
the first song. That would have been the great way to start it.
Oh man.
I mean, I like the variety of the songs on there. Some good tunes.
It's-
I would
it's-
listen to that playlist.
it's too eclectic for my taste. She needs to tighten it up a little bit.
Beyonce and Styx should not be in the same.
That's what
playlist,
I'm
in my opinion.
okay.
You
There's some
You
hidden
guys like to
gems
keep
in there,
a
I'm
genre tight on the.
There's
See, I like to
some
bounce
hidden
around.
gems in there. I'm sure.
Like Beyonce is great. Don't get me wrong, but like in the same playlist as like Styx is like in so many other artists that aren't pop. Not for me.
I feel you. I got you.
One hair
But
metal.
like, it doesn't seem like there's a theme, is there, of actually turning the page? Like, I thought it was like, hey, you're down, team's not playing well. Let's have some songs that are going to help you turn the page.
If Welcome
just
to
seem
the
like
Jungle,
some good songs. I like these songs.
I don't want to be turning the page if Welcome to the Jungle is in a part
Right,
of it.
right.
I don't
Where
want to
does
be a
that?
part of
Where's
it.
the theme of turning the page and Welcome to the Jungle
Exactly.
or Renegade?
Like we about to fight?
David, I think we have to play
Like,
songs from this playlist throughout
think
the show
so.
today.
I
I
was
think
just
all of
thinking
our
that, yeah.
returns have to be from this playlist. But again, the first thing I thought was this would be my grade of this playlist. This is like a C- playlist. Too many eclectic genres, 2 Beyonce songs in the first 3. I agree with you, Willie. You've got to spread them out. I usually don't like to have multiple songs from the same artist in the same playlist, but like Raise Your Glass and Last Resort. Look, I am an elder emo, okay? I grew up as an emo kid. I still listen to some of that music. I can't imagine Mike Vrabel listening to Papa Roach in any shape or form. I just can't, like Like Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, Kiss, Van Halen? Absolutely. I could see Mike Vrabel getting down on some hair metal. New metal? I cannot see Mike Vrabel listening to Papa Roach.
I can see Mike Vrabel going crazy
Oh
on
wait,
Cuffin.
no, I think
by
Mike
Beyonce.
Vrabel, Papa Roach, that's wheelhouse for his age.
I don't know.
Well, Mike Vrabel, how old is Mike Vrabel?
We're about to find out.
50.
He's not that much older than me, right?
Mike
Like,
Vrabel
close to the
is
same age?
50.
50. He's
Yeah,
almost-
so
he's 2 years.
Papa Roach is
Papa,
Yeah, that's
he'd
in
be in
his
college.
that
wheelhouse.
song came out
That's college.
around 2000.
that's in
So
his
he would have
wheelhouse.
probably been, he was in his mid-30s.
I thought that was,
He was in the league.
I
by
feel
then.
like Papa Roach was 90s, no? Maybe late.
See,
mid-
y'all,
late
No,
90s?
that was
y'all-
2000s.
Y'all are thinking about the New England Patriot Mike Vrabel, the Belichick coach Mike Vrabel. We're talking about the Ohio State Mike Vrabel over there.
Mm.
That's what he is right now. The Ohio
Matthew in
State
Nashville
Mike
agrees.
Vrabel.
I can't believe she didn't have Bob Seger's Turn the Page in there.
I just assumed when
Yes.
I saw it that would be the first song.
I look, as someone who tried and failed to make playlists and burn CDs for girls he liked when I was younger, I had to perfect the craft.
You want
okay?
You want to a
It is
love song
2000
maker?
for Papa Roach. You're right.
Say that
You
again.
couldn't put together a good love songs, a track. You couldn't do that, man.
I do remember burning a CD for a girl I liked when I was a freshman in high school,
Mhm.
and it had 311's cover of The Cure's Love Song. And 311, the cover was on the 51st State soundtrack, the movie 51st States with
Mhm.
Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. Yeah,
It didn't go well.
it was unreciprocated.
I'm sure it was.
What is that supposed to mean?
Didn't go. It's a bad feeling when you put the effort into it like that. It doesn't go.
Yeah.
We've all been there. We've
Keegan
been there.
says, this show is so messy, we're grading the playlist now? Yes, yes.
What do you want us to do? Grade the draft or
Yes.
something?
We
We'll
can.
get to that.
We'll,
get to
we'll,
that.
we'll grade the draft, I'm sure. Mike Herndon of
Oh, my
paulkaharski.com will join us at 5 o'clock. He'll do that for us because he knows the Titans draft inside and out. Trevor Matich will join us at 4:20. But yes, we are grading the playlist. And as Matthew in Nashville says, Last Resort came out in 2000. So Mike Vrabel would have been
Yeah.
in his mid-30s.
Yeah, so
I think he
good.
would have I think he had outgrown Papa Roach by then.
No, nope.
In 2000, I was like 11 or 12. So that was right in my wheelhouse of angsty preteen.
Hey, he liked his music, man.
615-737-1025. How would you grade Dianna Russini's playlist allegedly sent to Mike Vrabel? Clearly, it did not work for the Titans. I believe that was during their 7-game losing streak to end that season. Also, airport gift versus drugstore gift. Which is worse? That's how we're starting today's show. 615-737-1025. All right, we will get into actual football things coming up next. Now that the NFL draft is over, how confident are we that the Tennessee Titans have done enough this offseason to support Cam Ward? 615-737-1025. We will attempt to answer that question coming up next. But today, the Nashville Sounds take on the Norfolk Tides at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35. Catch all of the action on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Family Leisure and Social Cantina.
If you've lived in Middle Tennessee for any time, you've seen how wild this weather can be. From winter storms to tornadoes to flooding, we've seen it all. Like many of you, the winter storms earlier this year caught me unprepared. I lost my power for 7 days, so I was 7 days not in my house, staying in a hotel, 7 days worrying about whether the pipes were going to burst. And I know each and every one of you were just like me if your power went out. Being unprepared isn't an option. I will be ready the next time a weather emergency happens. I started looking into whole generators and found TriStar Water, Power, and Air. They've been in business for over 30 years, specializing in generators for more than half of those, which is all great. But the reason I reached out to them was because of the reviews and the confidence of the homeowners shared about their experience with TriStar Water, Power, and Air. TriStar came to my house. The power specialist, Nathan, came to my house, did a free on-site assessment, and made sure the generator fit in my home for my family needs. The thing I appreciated most was they didn't try to oversell me. They shot straight from the hip, answered all my questions, and everything with them is turnkey and handled in-house. And that's one thing we don't like, okay? Is when you get something, put in your home, an appliance, and you make a call when something goes wrong, and there's always someone else that has to deal with it and not the company that sold it to you. But not at TriStar Water, Power, and Air. Everything is in-house. So when you make a call, something goes out, they're there to fix it. And that's the kind of relationship I want, and I know that's the kind of relationship you want. So look, the weather isn't slowing down. Be ready. Call TriStar Water, Power, and Air today and protect your home and your family. Find them at TristarWait.com. That's TristarWhyWait.com.
That was Mike Borgonzi on the additions of Fernando Carmona and Pat Coogan in the NFL draft. By the way, we are going to be playing songs from Dianna Russini's playlist, allegedly from Mike Vrabel, throughout the program. And that includes Raise Your Glass from Pink. By the way, let me correct myself. It's hard doing math on the air. Mike Vrabel would have been in his mid-20s when Papa Roach released Last Resort.
That'll work.
Absolutely.
But again, I even 25-year-old Mike Vrabel, I can't imagine him being that angsty. Papa Roach Last Resort is like the ultimate example of an angsty song. Do I need to read the opening lyrics? Do I need to recite them?
He was angsty back then, okay? So there you go.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing. Don't give a bleep if I
You know what?
cut my arm bleeding. Is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't see Mike Vrabel listening to that, but I could be wrong.
It could be a metaphor for something else.
I could be wrong. Quickly, some text about airport gifts versus drugstore gifts. One texter says, airport gift is the equivalent of stopping by Dollar General to get an anniversary card because you forgot to order one off Amazon 2 weeks ago. Another texter says, at least an airport gift has connections to the region, and it's not quite as generic as a drugstore gift. And you might have had a short trip where you weren't able to get anywhere to buy a gift other than the airport gift shop. But drugstore gift, definite fail. One texter says, the fact that she put Kiss God of Thunder? Wow, I think I'm in love. Watch out, Vrabel. I'm stealing your side piece.
Can you steal a sad piece?
Yes.
I guess you can.
I don't know from personal experience,
But
but I
you
would
just figured,
assume.
yeah,
I would
it's just-
assume.
Could be complicated.
It could be
complicated.
It could be complicated.
She is a side piece.
Yes, that
He is too.
she is the other woman.
Right.
She is
He
the other
is
woman.
too. They both are.
Well, she's more of the side piece. Well,
No,
I-
yeah,
no,
no.
I
Because
get
they're
you.
both
No,
married.
right. Yep,
They're
yep,
both
yep,
married.
yep,
So,
yep.
So
It'd be
there you
different if she
go.
wasn't married.
Equal opportunity side pieces.
Absolutely. There you go, Willie. I like that one.
EOSP.
Gender fluid.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. We do
Okay.
not discriminate when it comes to
No,
that.
we don't. Especially when it comes to side pieces.
Okay, let's get to the sport.
We're stupid to their level.
Let's get to the sport.
Okay.
Let's get to the sports.
Too low.
Yes.
Sports. All right, let's get to the
Man.
sports. All right. Now that the NFL draft is over, we have an idea of what the Tennessee Titans are going to be this coming season. We've seen the additions they made in free agency. Wan'Dale Robinson, a wide receiver. John Franklin Myers on the defensive line. Alante Taylor in the secondary. Cordell Flott in the secondary. They draft Carnell Tate. They trade up to draft Keldrick Falk. We have an idea of what this Tennessee Titans team is going to be this coming season. By the way, I was curious. I went to DraftKings Sportsbook to see if the Tennessee Titans over-under win total moved at all following the NFL draft. It has not. It's still over-under 6.5 wins for the Tennessee Titans based on the opening lines I found on Google. So Vegas still thinks the Titans are a 6.5 win team. But here's
I'm not going to say it. Between 6 and
8.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to do the
6
6-7.
6'7".
Speaking of cringeworthy stuff.
Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
we're gonna forget that happened.
Yeah, Willie.
No, y'all won't.
David, can you cut that from the podcast, please?
Please do it.
I will.
Just kidding. Okay. Actually, I do have to read one more text about Mike Vrabel. Andrew says, and this is very good, Andrew. Bravo. Cut Vrabel's life into pieces. Sedona was his last resort. Ho! That's a good one. Get it? Because they went to a resort. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Back to the Titans. I swear. Back to the Titans. Here's the question we all want to answer. 615-737-1025. Do we feel the Tennessee Titans have done enough this offseason to support Cam Ward's growth in year 2? And I think there's a question underneath that question that a lot of us have. And that is, did the Tennessee Titans do enough to address the offensive line? I think we can all agree, Derek. The weapons at wide receiver look better. You draft Carnell Tate. You bring in Wan'Dale Robinson. Calvin Ridley's coming back. Another year of DK and Iamaner. Probably more of Gunnar Helm. The defense, especially the pass rush, looks better on paper. You've got Robert Saleh coaching that defense. But that offensive line, I still think, is the number one question Titans fans have about whether this team did enough to help stimulate Cam Ward's growth in year 2.
Well, I think only time will tell. But, I know, after the first round or two that people are wondering, well, at least the first 3 rounds, people are wondering why aren't they reaching for or trying to get an offensive lineman. Subsequently, they get an offensive lineman later in the draft, and it might turn out to be, 2 good picks for the Titans across the offensive line. Now, in regards to, this offensive line coming back from last year, I think they played well toward the end. But the problem is you don't know what you're going to do at right guard because Zeitler hasn't made a decision, or you haven't made a decision on Zeitler. You cut Cushenberry without a true plan at center. You have Slotman's there. You got him through free agency. You can throw Slater in there, but I think Slater's going to be more so a guard. He's going to be competing at the guard position. So you cut an individual without a true backup plan. Well, let's hope that them going out and getting 2 guys via the draft, bringing in guys, through free agency, they can create some type of competition, which I like, because for the last 3 or 4 years, the one thing that I was disappointed in was when the statements were made that there was no competition at the tackle position, at the tackle spot, where they brought guys in, and the guys the season before were bad. They didn't even bring competition in for those guys to make them better. It was just like, oh, we're going to run it back. They created no sense of competition across the offensive line. And that is why they suffered the problems that they did for the last couple of seasons. So what is happening now, I think they're creating competition, which in turn will make them better. And it's not done. There's still a lot of days in between now and the start of camp, and even at the end of camp, so they can bring guys in to also continue to compete. So I like that part in regards to the offensive line.
My take is that the offensive line, especially, it's hard. Nobody is giving up good offensive linemen. It is hard to go shopping for offensive linemen, and they've got a lot of holes on the team. They have done quite a bit the last couple of years to address it. I've been saying this the whole time. I think it's just impossible in a year to be able to address all of the holes on the team. I still think it's not the biggest hole on the team. I think they feel like at those 2 positions, center and guard, that's where you can patchwork it probably better than at the 2 tackle positions, especially if you have a really good cornerstone guard on the opposite side. So I think they feel like, okay, let's see what we got here for another year. And then in another year, hopefully we'll have less holes. It'll be easier to go find what we need if that's what needs to be addressed. So I think they've done a reasonable job. They had to go find some of these other things that are glaring weaknesses, like the wide receiver, the edge rusher. These things were bigger priorities.
But I think they believe getting Pat Coogan or Fernando Carmona, they believe they have 2 guys that can grow with this team and ultimately become starters. So I think they honestly feel good about, not to say they can't bring another veteran guy in, or, practice guy from another team to create some sense of more competition. But I think they feel good with the guys that they have in the room. Because like you said, Willie, they, in their mind, even though they're going to have to replace Dan Moore pretty soon here, they got their left tackle, they got their left guard, and they got their right tackle. So I think they're satisfied in a sense with those 3 positions. It's trying to get that guard, that right guard, and that center situated, because even when they do, it's still going to take time for these offensive linemen to gel. That's why, that's why sometimes you start off slow with offensive linemen and it looks like it's going bad. Then by the middle of the season, and therefore after, they play a lot better. Why? Because they've gotten the time, the repetition together.
Willie, to your point about filling every hole, Howie Roseman, GM of the Eagles, had this quote from Zach Berman. If we went into the draft and filled every hole, we probably didn't have a good draft. Berman explains this is a comment Roseman makes each year, and it served him well. His point is that when you're pushing your needs in the draft, you're deviating from the process. But when I look at the scouting reports for Fernando Carmona and Pat Coogan, and I know that these scouting reports aren't everything, but for someone who admittedly has never watched Fernando Carmona or Pat Coogan super closely. I mean, I watched Indiana football games, but it wasn't like I was watching Pat Coogan play Indiana football games. Here's what Dane Brugler of The Athletic said about both of them in his scouting reports. About Carmona, quote, Carmona has a very average physical skill set, but his stalwart competitiveness and versatile experience are qualities that will speak to NFL coaches. He projects as a swing backup who can provide depth across the offensive line. On Coogan, Brugler said, quote, Coogan is a smart, tough-minded technician, though his mediocre athleticism, length, and recovery skills will be tough to mask versus NFL defensive linemen. He projects as an interior backup who can fill in at guard or center.
You just don't. If people are really upset, like I saw Paul Kuharski with they failed Cam Ward, they didn't pick an offensive line.
In the first 3 rounds.
Well, then you should be preaching every day to trade down and get extra picks. That's the only way that you can address all of these positions. They have needs at a ton of positions. And if you're going to do that, then don't complain that you don't have the elite guy, the dude, because that's where you try to go get that guy with the 4th pick. It's one or the other. These are the choices you have when your roster is depleted, because Mike Borgonzi came in after they had 5 terrible drafts. When you have 5 terrible drafts, you can't fix it in 1 or 2 drafts. It's going to take a while.
615-737-1025. Now that the NFL draft is over, how confident are you that the Titans have done enough this offseason to support Cam Ward? 615-737-1025. We will take your reaction coming up next. Also coming up next, I went searching for something, and then Jim Wyatt threw me a lifeline because he found it before I did, and I thought it was incredibly interesting. We will discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Let me tell all of you that our off-season coverage of the local professional football team here on 1025 The Game is presented by Tennessee Brew Works. Raise a glass with Tennessee Brew Works, proud partner and official craft beer of the football off-season coverage here on 1025 The Game. That was Field Yates of ESPN.
We're liking this playlist more and more.
Yeah.
It is eclectic, as I said.
It was for Mike.
A little too eclectic for my taste, but eclectic nonetheless. By the way, we are playing from Dianna Russini's playlist that she sent to someone named Mike in December of 2022.
Anyone named Mike.
It's a million Mikes.
If you're a Mike listening, it could have been you.
Yeah.
Her son's name's Mike.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms that people keep bringing
Oh boy.
up. Yeah.
We're not even going to.
That's the guy
We're not
Yeah,
gonna
that's on me.
Yeah, we're not going to even go there. But continuing the conversation about the Titans and have they done enough this offseason to help support Cam Ward, help stimulate his development in year 2. This morning, I set out to find something, and then I didn't have to because Jim Wyatt, the one and only, did it for me. So, Jim, if you're listening, thank you, sir. I wanted to know how often a team has drafted a quarterback number 1 overall and then taken a wide receiver in the top 5 the following year. And Jim Wyatt says the Titans were the 3rd team in the common NFL draft era to select a quarterback first overall and then pick a wide receiver in the top 5 the next year. And I thought this would be instructive. The 2 other examples, the Cincinnati Bengals taking Joe Burrow number 1 overall in 2020, then Jamar Chase 5th overall in 2021. It's pretty good. And then the Houston Texans taking David Carr, number 1 overall in 2002, and then taking Andre Johnson, 3rd overall. It was interesting. I went out to find that, and Jim Wyatt did it for me. So thank you, Jim.
Well, you got to find your quarterback playmakers. And, some teams choose to do it one way, and other teams choose to go about it, in consecutive drafts where they're getting their quarterback, in the first round, whether it be first overall, second overall, or whatever the case may be. And then the next following year, they go get them a playmaker, whether it be a wide receiver or a running back, or in many people minds, the Titans should have went and got a offensive lineman. Not that high, but I'm saying offensive lineman, because that do constitute, at least to me, somewhat of a playmaker for the quarterback, because without those guys, the quarterback can't get the ball out of his hands in enough time to hit those playmakers on the outside. And I think that's why some people are wondering, that's why the question was asked by you, Adam, have they done enough on the offensive line to make sure that, they can use Carnell Tate in a way that, can be very beneficial to the offense. But if you just look at this team, just up and down, these 2 or 3 drafts that they've had, and next year will be the 3rd year, it's critical. And I think they've started off on the right foot. They're getting a bunch of young guys that they feel can be new cornerstones, even free agent guys. The oldest free agent guy, I think, was John Franklin Myers. He was 29. The 2 corners are 26 and 27, somewhere around there. The nickel is 26, 27 years old. You have your offensive linemen outside of potentially Zeitler. They're all, more. I think he may be 30, 31, but you got your cornerstones, Peter and JC. They're both 23 and 24 respectively. So they are building a young nucleus. And I after I sat down and looked at the guys from the draft and then sort of compared them to the guys that they brought in via free agency, considering what they had and what they didn't have, this team is on the right path. Now, whether these guys go out and continue to maintain that level of play that they had at other places is yet to be seen. But that's across the board with the NFL, period. But I think the guys that they went and got were guys that were proven, guys that still were playing high-level football. Then you go get some rookies that you may have reached on the 2nd pick in the 1st round, but I think everybody else, you got them right where you thought they would be. and guys that you feel or you project will either be starters or will be guys that are cornerstones or guys that help you build this team to a championship team.
I want to get your guys' take on one point that Field Yates said, that he believes that Mike Barganzi, and I can like there are examples of this that we've talked, is seeking out character as a big part of it. I hear this debated all the time from scouts, is because I don't think anybody wants guys who are bad characters, but there comes a point where you have to have the tools physically to succeed, or you could have the best character, but if you can't play, then what good are you really going to do the team? So what did you think about that angle? Because I do think that Borgonzi does value that, the culture guys.
I think that's a better question for Derek, but I do know that the examples of trading Jarvis Brownlee and to an extent T'Vondre Sweat, it's clear that Borgonzi values that particular character trait. Remember when we were talking about what Willie and I were talking about, and Derek didn't want to do it, trading Jeffrey Simmons. What was the one thing Mike Borgonzi kept saying? He's the culture setter. If we're going to turn this thing around, Jeffrey Simmons has to be here.
He's the guy we want to build around.
Right. So Derek, as someone who was in locker rooms, I think you would have better perspective on Willie's question.
Yeah, and every locker room is different in a sense, but I think they're all the same. That you hope that your veteran guys can sort of foster this locker room of accountability. And obviously it comes from the head coach and trickles down, but the leaders are the spokesman or the mouthpiece of the head coach and trying to get everybody to sort of fall in line and everybody's fighting for the same thing. So those older guys tend to set the temperature in the locker room in regards to accountability. That's why we have such a really good locker room, whether it be here in Nashville or in Baltimore, because the older guys held the younger guys and everybody accountable for the things. Now, listen, you're going to have things that happen in the locker room. You're going to have that one guy that just always just finds himself doing something knuckleheadish. But eventually, those guys get weeded out. We're not asking you to be perfect. We're just asking you that, whatever decisions you make, just think about them first. Because everybody, there may be a situation that comes up totally out of your control and something happens. And it necessarily wasn't, but it does affect the team. So it's not going to be perfect, but you want to make sure that even in, if someone mess up, he's held accountable, and he's willing and ready to do whatever it needs to be done to rectify the situation. So that's what he's looking for, guys that are not going to upset the apple cart. And he's not necessarily meaning off the field necessarily. They're meaning in the locker room, especially when you're losing, that's when that stuff starts to come up. The backbiting and, coming into meetings late, they always complain. All this stuff sort of filters down to those young guys. So that's what they mean really about high character guys, is guys that are going to do the necessary things that are going to help the football team in the locker room.
Do you think Borgonzi feels like the veterans now that he have that character trait? Because I think we saw with the two trades in particular last year with Sweat and Brownlee, two guys who had shown at least flashes of really good talent, right? The trades of those guys sort of indicated when he came in, he probably didn't like some of the vibes of the locker room. He wanted that culture piece to be there, because I think once you have it, it's easier to keep it, right? Once you establish it. Would you agree with that?
Once you establish it with the older guys, and when those core guys, it's hard to break, because those guys are always going to hold you accountable. And in referring to Brownlee and Sweat, they had no off the field problems. No. That's why I said it's
nothing like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you talk about high character guys, those guys fall into the space of high character off the field, but it was just some things going on in the locker room that just didn't mesh.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be he's on the police report like Pac-Man Jones.
I do want to quickly go back to that list that Jim Wyatt put out there the Titans becoming the third team in the common NFL draft era to select a quarterback first overall and to then pick a wide receiver in the top 5. So it's Cam Ward and Carnell Tate, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And I would call that a successful partnership, right? They went to the Super Bowl, I believe, in Chase's rookie season. Joe Burrow has struggled to stay healthy, but when Burrow and Chase have been on the field, it's been explosive. You guys are going to have to remind me about David Carr and Andre Johnson.
Well, the common theme of the two other examples is a horrible offensive line.
Yeah.
And the quarterback got killed.
David Carr got absolutely
and so did Joe Burrow.
demolished. Yes,
it was somehow they overcame, and that shows you just how great Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are. But they did not have a good offensive line at all, and the Texans had a famously bad offensive line to where I think Carr was shell-shocked and never recovered, really. Andre Johnson, obviously, was a great, great player.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I believe that the Titans are a little bit ahead of those teams. Because I think 3 positions they feel good about. Now, we can debate on Dan Moore, but I think the Titans feel good about him for this season. They feel good about J.C. Latham and obviously Peter Skoronski. It's those 2 guys in the middle, sitting in the right guard, where they're still trying to figure it out. Whereas you go to those other teams, and they had much of nothing on their offensive line, and it was indicative of, how many times a quarterback, Derek Carr, David Carr. He at that point he had gotten sacked the most in NFL history. And does he still have the record?
He does. He was sacked
still has the record.
76 times in 2002, his rookie season. 76 times.
So
and then 68 times in 2005. He has 2 of the top 3
that's
all-time sacked seasons in NFL history.
That's not good. And that's why I said I think the Titans are a little bit ahead of them when you're talking about the offensive line, but yet still, you go out and you get a playmaker in Carnell Tate. If the offensive line doesn't improve, then it's going to be hard for that combination of Tate and Ward to build that rapport that they need, because Ward's going to always be on his back.
We can only hope that Carnell Tate is in the same ballpark as Jamar Chase and Andre Johnson. That is, man.
If
he's anywhere close to that, they're going to be all right.
That would be good company to keep. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction on the Titans offseason, the Titans draft. We will get back into the Titans with Trevor Matich at 420. But coming up next, we have college football's first big gambling scandal. We will discuss that and the potential fallout coming up next. 615-737-1025. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Trevor Matich, ESPN football analyst, will join us at around 4:20. We'll get back into the Titans NFL draft and more with Trevor. Mike Herndon of paulkaharski.com will join us at the top of the hour. But before we get to them, we have our first major gambling scandal in college football. This story broke yesterday, I believe, from Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. Quote, Texas Tech transfer quarterback Brendan Sorsby, one of college football's top returning players, is checking into a residential treatment program for a gambling addiction. Sorsby's decision to seek treatment, according to sources, came in the wake of the discovery of Sorsby making thousands of online bets on a variety of sports via a gambling app, which jeopardizes his eligibility with Texas Tech. Thamel notes that Sorsby bet on Indiana football while redshirting for the Hoosiers as a true freshman in 2022, a season in
So
which
he bet on his team to win.
Yes, a season in which he played a single game as a reserve. The bets in 2022, according to sources, were on Indiana to win, and none came in a game in which Sorsby appeared.
I don't know about you guys. I only bet on my team to win. It doesn't fly with me. I don't. You're either gambling or you're not. If you're gambling, then that's wrong.
No, you're right.
But I know a lot of people. They're like, well, you're only gambling in the wins. What's the big deal? I'm not down with that.
No, and it's unfortunate, for him. But he's put himself in a situation. I'm just okay. He got caught cheating his freshman year. Got redshirted, and then someone else wanted to bring him in, and they did. Cincinnati, was it Cincinnati that brought him in after that, or Texas Tech? Cincinnati brought him in first.
Yes, this is from Pete Thamel. Sorsby's transfer to Texas Tech this offseason positioned him as one of the faces of the sport for 2026, as he was ESPN's #1 transfer candidate.
Okay, so when he transferred out into Indiana, knowing that he had a history of betting on games, I wonder what the conversation was when he went to Cincinnati.
Did they even know?
Exactly. Did they know?
I'm going to guess they didn't.
Yeah, you may be right about that. So he goes from Cincinnati to now Texas Tech. And now what he did they had to have known because he got suspended.
At Cincinnati?
He got suspended in Indiana. Did he or did he not get suspended? I thought he did.
Here's more from Thamel. Sorsby bet on Indiana football while redshirting for the Hoosiers as a true freshman in 2022, a season in which he played in a single game as a reserve. The bets in 2022, according to sources, were on Indiana to win, and none came in a game in which Sorsby appeared. Sorsby's gambling has not drawn the attention of law enforcement, nor has he been linked to anyone attempting to influence the outcome of a game. Sorsby's gambling, sources said, was a steady flurry of small bets over a period of time. So
they didn't catch him.
So he was not
Indiana,
punished or nobody at Indiana said, hey, look. Hey,
that does not appear to be the case.
So isn't that interesting? And what does that say about the ability for a lot of college players to do this without
under the
radar?
Yeah. And obviously that's what happened at Indiana. Then obviously as he starts to perform better and he becomes one of the top players in the portal, now the story comes out. And that doesn't mean I'm not trying to, absolve him from anything. But honestly, this is what happens. And maybe they didn't think about it, or maybe they did and didn't care. When you start intertwining sports, collegiate sports with gambling, and then all these apps come out to make it even more accessible to everybody to bet. And you got a student that think he's doing something harmless, even though they've been told not to bet. He think he's doing something harmless when in actuality, you are breaking every rule there is. But not only that, you continue to bet. So maybe if somebody had caught him at the beginning, he wouldn't be in the situation that he's in now where he has had to check himself into rehab. But I don't know how you really come back from this one.
So
when you're talking about gambling,
he was expected to make more than $5 million this year at Texas Tech. John on our text line says, can they sue for the NIL money back? I don't know. That's an interesting question. One texter says, wasn't he also under 21? Legal age in Indiana is 21. So not only was he breaking the NCAA rules, he's breaking the law. That's a good point you bring up, texter. I just found that as I was looking at it. 1 second, because I believe you are right. The link, of course, isn't working when I need to. Indiana and Ohio, this is from ESPN as well. Indiana and Ohio had legal betting markets when Sorsby attended school in those states. The legal betting age is 21 in both states. Sorsby didn't turn 21 until January 2025, meaning he would have been underage while allegedly betting in Indiana and Ohio.
Well,
but don't you have to put in birth
you guys
date
agree?
And verify you and everything on these sites?
I've been asking that question all along. I don't know how easy it is to, fudge to get on the phone, because ultimately these gambling apps, they want your business. Are they really going to check if a guy's 18 or 21? I mean, if they're doing their job, yes. But the more you study these things, and I have looked into it, I've listened to a lot of material on this. At least in Vegas, if you roll up some, because this is my theory, I don't know this, but he's been betting for so long. And look, I hate to fill you in on this, but if you gamble enough, eventually you're going to lose, especially on those gambling apps where the algorithms and things, they try to weed you out if you actually are good. If you're a shark and you're good at what you do, they're going to say, hey, try this other website because we're not going to take your bet anymore. You know what you're doing. We want the people that are just doing it for fun and don't know what they're doing. They should be going the opposite. They should be weeding out the people that potentially have a problem, but it is the opposite of that. So I would suspect that he has rolled up some pretty good debt, and a lot of what he has made as a good quarterback has gone right into that, and that's why he has finally had no choice but to turn himself in, and he probably wishes somebody had gone and chastised him his freshman year. At this point, I don't know that, but this is just what it looks like from the outside to me. And I don't think they have any choice. The NCAA, he should be ineligible.
Here's the other thing, too, Derek.
For his own good, almost.
Yeah.
Since sports wagering became legal, the scandals in the NCAA have mostly involved, low major programs, schools you've probably never heard of, playing obscure games and prop bets and things of that nature. This is, for all intents and purposes, one of the best quarterbacks in college football this coming season, who's making a ton of money in NIL, playing for a college football playoff contender in Texas Tech. I'm wondering if there are going to be more players in Sorsby's realm who get caught in this, because it would be naive to believe that, hey, Sorsby's just one bad apple, right? The fact that it's happening at a major school, a major program, a college football playoff contender, the number one transfer quarterback in the country, making that much money. I mean, this could blow the lid off of more situations, I would think.
Well, we say that, but stories don't come out like that, because you would think that, as many apps as there is out there in regards to gambling, we should have more stories. But the truth is, they're not looking for the stories unless, it's a high profile or it's a group of people within one university that is, betting on games. But outside of that, I don't think they're going to look, to see which one of these guys or girls are placing bets, either when they're under 21 or when they're over 21, but they're betting on their team, period. So, but this is something that I'm sure they had to have talked about when, betting, online betting at least, became a big thing, because again, it takes all but 2 or 3 minutes for me to go on my phone, put an app down, and I could place a bet within the next 10 minutes. We can go to break and I can put everything on my phone, and by the time we come from break, I can have made some bets. And that's too easy for collegiate athletes. It's just too. And I know. Hey, listen. I know there's not much they say they can't do, but it's just so easy, especially for guys that or girls that are looking around and they're seeing NIL money being tossed around, but they're not getting any, or schools that don't have the budget of other schools. And some people, be it right or wrong, they choose to go that route. So the NCAA, which they won't do, they need to do something about it. I'm sure once they sort of break up, because again, that's what's going to happen. Eventually, they're going to break up to the Power 2 or whatever. Hopefully, they will have strict guidelines in there in regards to gambling.
I wonder about this factor too. It's become so normal for college students. They shared a stat on that article that 4 years ago or something, 60% of college students said that they had gambled on a sport at one time or another. And they, I think, probably rightfully speculate that number is going up. It's not going down because it's so normal. So you come into the college world already surrounded by people that are doing this. And so it's like, it's not seen as a big deal to probably be gambling, but they may not be making the connection of the dangers of it, are the games on the level kind of factor, which inevitably we're leading to that, right? It's just a matter of time before somebody gets in so much trouble that it's not I'll just check myself in, I need some help, which is, if that's what he did, that's the right thing, whether he ever plays college football or not anymore. It's an addiction, right? It brings you down. But the next level is somebody throwing a game, a big game, right? And not for a lower level college program where nobody's really paying attention, but one of the big time games that we're all watching.
ESPN says, according to amended NCAA guidelines that came out in 2023, student athletes who wager on their own games or on other sports at their own schools face permanent loss of college eligibility in all sports. Other potential gambling punishment guidelines include if a college football player, for example, bets on a different school in their own sport, the loss of 50% of one season of eligibility will be considered. The guidelines in 2023 include guidance that wagers greater than $800 would lead to the potential loss of 30% of a season of eligibility. For cumulative wagering that greatly exceeded $800, the staff is directed to consider whether additional loss of eligibility, including permanent ineligibility, is appropriate.
But they can bet on professional sports.
I guess technically they can, right?
Which is, again, it's that gray area. You're telling them not to.
You shouldn't be doing it at all.
Exactly. You said you can't bet on your sport, but you could bet on another school's sport, and you can bet without any recourse. You could bet on professional sports. At least that's the way they made it seem.
I feel like it should probably be across the board, because you can roll up the big debt, which would put you in a position to say, I have no money. I got to get out of the hole. How can I get out of the hole? Well, I'll talk to a gambler. We'll fix the game. I think it just either way could get you there. And so I would close it off altogether. And you've got to have strict penalties, or else, because it's so normal, people are going to keep doing it until somebody gets really penalized hard.
615-737-1025. We'll ask Trevor Matich about this and more coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason. Adam Vingan here with you.
Are we
Continuing-
selecting Def Leppard photograph over Nickelback photograph?
Well, Def Leppard photograph was on Dianna Russini's playlist, not
Right.
Nickelback photograph.
So that song has that going for it. Of course, I, like everybody from my era, had Pyromania, the Def Leppard. I had the cassette tape and wore it out. I have nothing against Nickelback, although Nickelback, they take their share of barbs, right? And
Indeed they do. By the
but
way,
that could be for our text line running, are you a Nickelback photograph or Def Leppard photograph? It probably depends on how old you are.
that's a good question. And to clarify, Derek, NCAA athletes cannot bet on pro sports.
Okay.
So
Good.
just a point of clarification. Let's go to our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com and welcome in our friend Trevor Matich, ESPN football analyst. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
Adam, I'm great. How are you doing?
We're great. Thank you for thank you for joining us. We're having you, but thank you for joining us as always. So we were just discussing this story about Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby, who is entering a gambling addiction program. The first, unless I'm missing something obvious, the first major gambling scandal in terms of the name brand of the program. How do you see this all playing out for Sorsby and the NCAA overall?
I think that Sorsby has an uphill battle to get back on the field ever again as a college player, in part because one of his gambling, at least some of his gambling, occurred when he was at Indiana and he bet on Indiana games. Now, according to reports, he didn't bet on Indiana to lose or anything like that, and he didn't play in any of the games that he bet on. But the NCAA has a real hard red line against gambling on your own team. And so I think it's going to be hard for him to overcome that, especially then when you add to it the volume of the rest of the gambling. So that's going to be tough. And it puts Texas Tech in a difficult position because their backup quarterback to him, who was the backup quarterback last year, Will Hammond, won't be ready until probably the second or third week because he's coming off an ACL injury. And so right now, the quarterback situation at Texas Tech is a bit dire if Sorsby is not able to come back. But I would suggest this. I don't want to necessarily, judge him because I'm not in his shoes. But if we just lift personalities out of it and jump above that, there's something called the rule of stupids. And the rule of stupid says, don't do stupid things in stupid places around stupid people at stupid times. If you're a college football player, gambling is a very stupid thing. Not recognizing that there is a breadcrumb trail on your phone and in the cloud and in a whole bunch of other places documenting your gambling is an incredibly stupid thing. And so this to me is just an amazing example of an egregious violation of the rule of stupids and a completely self-inflicted problem. Now, the reason I don't want to say about him directly is because he's now in rehab for gambling addiction. I know that addictions of any sort are tough. But the concept of this kind of trouble to get into, you got to be some kind of egregious moron.
Indeed. Let's move on to the Titans draft class. We're going to get your thoughts on the draft class as a whole. But first, since you are our resident offensive lineman, I would like to get your thoughts on the selections of Fernando Carmona from Arkansas and Pat Coogan from Indiana. How do you think those two could factor into the Titans' offensive line plans this season?
I think they both have a chance to start. If they do start, it's bad for the Titans. That's because the guys that they're competing with aren't able to beat them out. But the thing about both of those guys, they're kind of the same guy. That they both are strong on the run. They both are good pass protectors, but neither one of them is a particularly great athlete. And fast, twitchy, sudden defensive tackles and nose guards can give them grief. Now, technique can overcome some of that. And both of these guys show very good technique, although they could both get better from an NFL standpoint. But from a college standpoint, they both show very good technique. They're both hard workers. They have a high motor, and they've got a chance to start because they'll both run the ball, or excuse me, be pretty good run blockers, better pass blockers. And as long as they don't run up against that fast, twitchy nose guard, they'll have a chance to be steady. Hopefully, neither one will have to start this year. Starting next year, I feel a lot better about both of them.
Now, Trevor, the Titans after their draft, I felt going into the draft that they had plugged or filled a lot of holes, or some of the holes that they had at the end of the season via free agency. Now you look at what they did via the draft. How much better do you think this team got? And do you think that the guys that they chose to draft will ultimately be guys that are either starters or key contributers?
Derek, I think they got a lot better. I mean, like a lot better. But that's not saying a whole lot, because 2 years ago they were the worst team in the NFL. And last year, only 3 other teams were worse than they were. So getting better isn't terribly hard. But I love the plan that has come into focus from a combination of the offseason and trades and free agency, and now this draft. Because they brought in guys at positions of need who seriously elevate their competitiveness. And I think when you look at their draft, they got, for the most part, faster and more athletic while also getting younger. I mean, you just take one guy, the 5th-round pick, Nick Singleton, running back out of Penn State. He's a 220-pound running back who runs a 4.4. Now, there's some durability questions. They don't want him to be a 20-carry guy, but he's a very good receiver. And some of the things that we talked about for Jeremiah Love, who the Cardinals ended up drafting one spot ahead of the Titans, that he could do in terms of moving around different places, getting a matchup advantage in space as a receiver. Some of those things Singleton can also do. So, I think that they did a lot of really smart things in this draft. And I think overall they got faster and more athletic in this draft.
Now, Trevor, how long do you think is going to take, regardless of who becomes the starter? Because I think there are fans out there that think that once we get an offensive line, put it together, we should be good, and there shouldn't be any, hiccups going into the season. But I know that's not true, and definitely that's not true. But when you're adding 2 new offensive linemen, typically, how long does it take those guys to gel?
It takes a while. And Derek, you're bringing up a point that guys inside the locker room like you know very well. And sometimes, it's hard to put a finger on if you're not inside the locker room. And that is the chemistry between offensive linemen. The best offensive lines in the league aren't usually the ones that have the most high-end talent here and there. It's the ones that are pretty good across the board who have stayed together and played together for 4 or 5 or 6 years. Because the choreography between them, the playing together, picking up stunts, being together on zone blocking, and all those different things require hundreds and hundreds of reps to get good at. So all of a sudden, you've got now a left guard and left tackle that played together last year, Dan Moore for the Titans, and then Peter Skoronski. But then Skoronski didn't play with the center that he'll be playing with this year. That center never played with Skoronski or the guard he'll be playing with this year. And J.C. Latham at right tackle will have a new guard next to him unless Kevin Zeitler comes back and plays, which I think may still be the best option at right guard for the Titans. We'll see how that works out. And how long it takes those guys to gel as a group is more important than the fact that at left tackle, they have a steady player who's a playoff tackle and more. And you've got an 11th round draft pick at left guard, 11th pick in the draft at left guard, 7th pick in the draft at right tackle. That's all nice, but how they play together is what matters. And with the center and the right guard completely up in the air, it's going to be a weak spot until it's not.
Trevor Matich is with us from ESPN. We're talking football with him. Trevor, I thought it was interesting the path that Diego Pavia took after the draft was over. It looked like he was going to have to just try out to get to training camp, and then today he signs a deal. What do you think happened with that, and how do you think the fit will be with the Ravens?
Now, I thought, Willie, that he would go and try out, and then they would offer him a contract if they like what they saw, and then they ended up giving him a 3-year contract before he showed up to try out. And my thought when I saw that was that some other team was going to sign him, and the Ravens wanted to make sure that they got him. And I think the Ravens got a gem. You know, I don't know that Pavia will be a franchise quarterback, but I think he will be a pest for opposing defenses. He will be a pain in their neck because he's the kind of guy that once he gets ready to go will be perfect to go in situations, you know, 3rd and short, you know, 3rd and goals in short yardage situations and things like that, where he can run and pass and roll out and create on the move, extend plays, all those different things. And the thing is, on paper, he can do the kinds of things that Lamar Jackson can do. He's just not as big and as strong and probably not as fast and things like that. But it's not like you've got Lamar Jackson, who is at his best when he moves around, and the backup for the Ravens is a 6'6" pure pocket passer, which is a real problem from a game planning standpoint if something happens to Jackson. So I think it's interesting that they gave him this 3-year contract without even trying him out, because I think that he's got the ability to make this roster and not play very many snaps, but have the snaps that he does play be very impactful.
So he's at least to start trying out for the 3rd quarterback position, very possibly on the practice squad. So what would you advise him to do about his whole persona, the bravado, the social media stuff? Does he need to take a back seat with that some, or would you just tell him to be himself?
Well, that is such a great point. And I would tell him to swallow it and keep it on the down low until he proves himself in the NFL. You don't want to be like, you know, remember Shedeur Sanders last year? You know, he was all about how he was great and he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And, you know, then he fell to the 5th round, I think. And, you know, and then he did some good things as a player, and then he didn't. And then, you know, what you don't want to do is parachute into a locker room as a rookie who's never busted a grape in the NFL and start to proclaim that you are awesome. You prove that you're awesome. And those veterans who have kids in school who are a lot older than you will then decide whether or not you're a legitimate NFL player. But if you show up and you just go on social media and you pull a Shedeur and you're all worried about being an influencer and all that other stuff before you've busted a grape in the NFL, you might not ever get a chance to bust a grape.
Trevor, speaking of quarterbacks, Will Levis, despite all the speculation, is still on the Titans. So where does he go from here?
You know, it's a tough call because they've got Hendon Hooker here, former Tennessee quarterback. And the thing about Hooker is that the one thing he does really well is throws the deep ball really well. Levis, if you look at Levis, he's done a lot of good things in his time as a Titan. And it was completely unfair that he played behind some of the most epically disastrous offensive lines in the history of the NFL. I mean, when Levis was starting for the Titans, those offensive lines should have their own section in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for being that bad. So, but the thing about Levis is that he looks the part, you know, he works hard, but he also hasn't really shown the ability to rise up and be that franchise guy. Can he? Maybe. But I think from here, it's more likely that they keep Hendon Hooker than it is that they keep Will Levis, because I think they've seen enough of Will Levis to know that Hooker might be a guy they might want to try to develop should they keep that 3rd guy. Now, they could put Hooker on the practice squad, but I don't know that he would stay there for very long. I like Will Levis. I wish the best for Will Levis. I just don't see a place for him on this team with Mitchell Trubisky being the backup quarterback.
Trevor, before we let you go, typically I do not get excited about undrafted free agents, but one of the Titans' undrafted free agents was Jacksonville State wide receiver Brock Rechsteiner, who is the son of wrestling legend Scott Steiner. What do you think of Rechsteiner as a project for the Titans?
I think it's going to be interesting. The reason he wasn't drafted is that he's not particularly polished. He's kind of fast enough, at about a 4.5, where he ran at his pro day. And the thing is, he's pretty big. He's 6'2", about 220, 225. And I just don't think he's particularly polished. He had a good day at pro day. He showed good athleticism, good explosiveness. He's a big guy. His opportunity to stay will likely be special teams to start with, but he's the kind of a high motor, competitive, durable, physical guy that is definitely a practice squad candidate and a chance to get onto the bottom of the roster as a core special team.
I'm selfishly rooting for Brock Rechsteiner to make the Tennessee Titans. Trevor Matich has been our guest on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. He joins us every Tuesday. Trevor, as always, a pleasure. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, guys.
615-737-1025. Mike Herndon of paulkaharski.com will join us at the top of the hour. We'll get back into the Titans draft class with Mike at 5. But coming up next, I want to sneak in another hockey thought about the Predators. I don't think this is going to cause any disagreements between Willie and me, but we'll find out. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. That was Elliot Friedman, who will join us on Thursday on the 32 Thoughts podcast, talking about the Predators GM search, a potential curveball.
A curveball.
And we did not play this in the clip, but a moment or two later, Elliot's co-host Kyle Bukowski said, wait a minute, go back to Nashville for a minute. Curveball, what are you talking about? And Elliot mentioned, quote, somebody who's under consideration that we're unaware of yet. And it leads me to this question. Why haven't the Predators hired a new GM yet? I asked Elliot Friedman last week, is this the slowest or most methodical GM search of all the GM searches? New Jersey's already hired a new GM. Toronto is looking for a new GM. Vancouver's looking for a new GM. But remember, part of the reason why the Predators announced in early February that Barry Trotz was retiring was so that they could get a head start on this process. It's been almost 3 months. I'm kind of surprised that they haven't hired somebody yet. Willie, are you as surprised as I am?
I'm pretty surprised. I would say. And Bill Haslam at the press conference where Barry Trotz announced his retirement and the plan going forward, he said we want to make sure we have the new person in by the draft. Now, the draft is still a long way away. They haven't even had the draft lottery yet. So you're still another week or so. So it's not like they absolutely have to have somebody in there. But I would think as days go by, for example, they just signed another player yesterday out of the KHL, Pinchuk, who I think is a significant sighting. He's a guy that I think they believe will have a chance to win a significant job. And he does play center, a position that they are desperate for help and depth and all that with. And I guess the way they look at it is Barry Trotz can do the job until they find the right person. So it's not like they're working without a GM. But I would think the new GM would want as much time as possible to set the table, to evaluate the roster that they have, the personnel that they have. And I'm sure they're doing this, right, as they're interviewing for this job. They're doing homework on the Predators. But that's different than being in the office every day and really going to work at it and organizing how are you going to approach free agency? When can I start calling other general managers and start, gathering information on who needs what and what do we have that we might be interested in. So I do think it's time, right? I think if you're asking the question, why haven't they hired somebody yet? I understand why you're asking it. I think everybody right now, but you have to get it right? That's the overlying thing. But I'm a little bit surprised it's taking this long.
And I'm reminded of the quote from Steven Stamkos on Getaway Day last week when he said, we've talked about, is there going to be a rebuild or this or that? It's safe to say that's not going to be the case. And my question that day was, who told him that? Was it Barry Trotz, who is not going to be in charge of this process for much longer? Was it Bill Haslam? Was it Bill Haslam through Barry Trotz? Like Bill Haslam spoke to Trotz and then Trotz relayed that message to Steven Stamkos. It felt like an odd message for a team that hasn't hired a new full-time GM.
And I wouldn't use the word odd, but the word that jumped out to me was the conviction of why it wasn't just Steven Stamkos. He was probably the most demonstrative.
Yes,
and
there were others
that stood out the most, but they all had the same thing. So it was clear that, like you said, that was the messaging in the internal meetings that they have. And we don't know who was in those meetings, but they did all walk out of there with the same idea that, hey, we were a pretty good team for the last 2/3 to 3/4 of the season. And that's who we think we are. We have young players that we think are going to get a year better. The optimism of the older players can not age out in a year. It seems like that's the thought, but we don't know who the GM is. So
I'll tell you,
it was pretty interesting.
I'll tell you what.
But the conviction that they said it, knowing they don't know who the general manager is, was definitely eye-opening.
It was striking. I will say the ultimate curveball, David Poilon retired.
That's not going to happen.
I know, but that would be the ultimate curveball.
Okay, curveballs. I don't know who that could be.
Okay, when is that cutoff point? just
The
realistically,
NHL draft. The NHL draft is in late
point?
June.
Okay, so when would be theoretically
I-
you would
I-
say you passed it, but let's just say we haven't reached that point.
I-
What would be it?
I think if the Predators do not have a GM in place by June 1st, you've got problems.
Okay, so
That,
what
that
if
would be my
And
my date.
that's a whole month.
I
You
know.
have a lot of time. But
yes.
so what if the guys that they are interviewing, let's take away the curveball, even the curveball. What if the guys they are interviewing sort of falls in line with what they want, in regards to not not doing a total rehaul or doing it. It seems like the sentiment is we're not doing a total rehaul here. We're just going to add and move on. Hopefully these younger guys can continue to develop and we can get better. They showed their worth toward the end of the season. Hopefully that translates to next season. But what if the message to all of them is this is what we're thinking? So it's not sort of like the Titans. We were asking, well, when are they going to hire their GM? They fired their coach, X amount of games into the season. Well, January 17th, during the playoffs, before the Super Bowl got here, they hired their GM. I understand it's not the same, but what if the message across the board is this is what we're going to do? The guy that we hire is going to be in line with that, and we're doing the evaluations of the players as we speak. So when he does take the job, it's not incumbent on him to do all the evaluations, and then we kind of go from there.
And that was my question last week too. Are the Predators disqualifying GM candidates who think that the team needs to rebuild?
Which means you would be disqualified.
Definitely.
I would not be eligible. I would not be eligible.
And is that why they did it?
But do you get my point?
Yes,
It would-
absolutely.
It's
a very fair point.
Let's say one of the GM candidates came in and Barry Trotz or Nick Saban or somebody asked the GM candidate the question, what would be your plan for our team? Next year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And that GM candidate says, I think this team has gone as far as it can go in its current form. If I were hired, I would enact a rebuild. And then that candidate leaves and they close the door. And then Nick Saban and Barry Trotz and Bill Haslam and the rest of the group says, we don't want that. We're not doing that. We're not asking him back. I have legitimately wondered.
And it's a really good point because I can come up with hypotheticals of a lot of job openings where I'm sure that happens. And I use when the Titans were looking for Mike Vrabel's successor. In the press release was Amy Adams-Strug saying, we've got this great young quarterback. Like she really showered, without naming him, Will Levis, who had played the second half of the season. And of course, his first game, he threw 4 touchdown passes. So at the time, it was like, we need the guy who really believes in Will Levis and is going to take Will Levis to the next level. So if a guy, like, if you wanted that job, you knew you had to come in there with a plan for Will Levis. And deep down, like, you want to be an NFL coach, do you think that person had to convince himself about Will Levis? Or like, if he came in and said, look, I want this job, but I can tell you right now, Will Levis is not a starting quarterback in this league, he wouldn't have gotten the job. So I'm sure it happens in workplaces, regardless of whether it's sports or other things, where you are looking for a person that aligns with your views, for better or worse, right? But I think that might be in play here.
Keith says the ultimate curveball. Predators don't like any of the candidates or don't get the GM they want and ask Barry Trotz to come back for one more year.
I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I do wonder, are they waiting for the first round to be over because maybe there are a handful of candidates that would like to stay until at least the first round is over, or at least maybe when their team is eliminated? Is that possibly why?
It's possible.
But it does make me wonder, though, the curveball, that screams late entry, right? Somebody who hasn't been rumored, hasn't been in the circle of people going through the process. So who would it be? Where would that person be coming from?
And the good news is we will have Elliot Freeman on the program.
So maybe he'll
on
know
Thursday.
more by Thursday.
He does his homework. We'll ask him about it on Thursday. Quickly, let's go to Scott in Hendersonville on our phone line. Scott, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Well, I think the second part of this is pretty easy to understand. The reason Stamkos can come out and say that there's not going to be a rebuild is because the core of the team all has no movement contracts, and no new GM can do anything about that. If if the 6 or 7 core guys decide, and apparently they have, that they like playing with each other, then they're going to play with each other, and no one can really do anything about it. So I think that's where that's coming from. But Willie hit upon, the whole curveball idea. It sounds to me like it's got to be somebody whose team is still in the playoffs and they're waiting for them to drop out. My question is, who would that be? Who would the GMs out there that are still have teams in the playoffs be that we would possibly be talking to?
Thank you, Scott.
It's a good question, and I want to go back to his point before. I think there's validity to that, not only because of what the players themselves desire, but knowing that even if you did come in and say, you know what, I know they like playing here, they love Nashville, and they think they can win, but I still think we should rebuild, to rip that Band-Aid off, to go to them and say, you know what, I know what you said, but I got to do what I got to do. How would you possibly get decent return, as good a return for those guys if you wanted to go just right down the line and say, I want to trade all these guys? I don't think you could win that battle. Maybe 1 or 2. But if you wanted a full rebuild, I think that would be hard to really get equal value for what those guys are worth. Would you agree with that? It'd be difficult, right? Especially if it's sort of, quote, against their will, or they're saying, hey, I'll give you 5 teams. I'm not going anywhere, but I'll give you a list of 5 or something, because they control the cards. They have full no movement clauses, right? They don't have a list. They have a full no move, right?
Hair Metal Henry, yes. Hair Metal Henry says, if we're talking curveball, sounds like they're bringing in Theo Epstein. I'm all for it.
You do wonder about something like that. Is it somebody outside of hockey?
Didn't Theo Epstein do? I feel like he was in the NHL or potentially interviewed for a GM job in the NHL. I do remember that being a story at one point.
And it's not completely unprecedented, because Paul DePodesta, who is a character in the movie Moneyball, sort of the right-hand man of Billy Beane, he ended up with the Cleveland Browns a few years later. It didn't go very well for him at all. And I think he's back in some form. I just read this the other day, and I can't remember who he's with. But I do think there's probably a school of thought that an analytic thinker who really knows how to work the numbers could cross over from sport to sport.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the Predators and their GM search. 615-737-1025 tonight in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Boston at Buffalo, Minnesota at Dallas, Anaheim at Edmonton. The Oilers on the brink of elimination. And Connor McDavid is a game-time decision. Oh, boy.
Oof.
Oh, boy. Oilers fans.
Did anybody see the Utah-Vegas game last night?
Until I fell asleep.
What a great game. I have to admit, I was 75% asleep. I did wake up when I heard the crowd, but what a game. Colton Sissons and Cole Smith, by the way, right in the middle of the action. Cole Smith scored last night. They're playing a lot. John Tortorella likes Cole Smith.
They are Tortorella-type players.
Yes.
And by the way, Predators fans, you do want to be rooting for the Golden Knights to make it to at least the Western Conference Final, not just because you like Colton Sissons and Cole Smith,
Jeremy Lauzon.
But if the Golden Knights make it to the conference final, the 3rd round pick that came over in the Nick Hague trade becomes a 2nd round pick.
You move up 32 spots.
You do move up. So go Golden Knights. 615-73. That's
hard to say. But...
Yes, I know. I know you probably feel dirty. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com will join us. We'll get back into the NFL draft. He knows this draft class up and down. So we'll talk about that with Mike coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David James here with you. Talking Titans. The NFL draft has come and gone. And to help us break down the Titans draft class, we go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Thanks for joining us again. So for those who don't know Mike Herndon, he is a big Texas Longhorns fan. So Mike is very familiar with linebacker Anthony Hill, who was the Titans' second-round pick over the weekend. Mike, how do you see Hill fitting in with the Titans and Robert Saleh's scheme?
Yeah, I think he's a great fit, to be honest. You look at some of these linebackers that they've had in the past. Bobby Wagner specifically comes to mind, who, coincidentally is Anthony Hill's favorite linebacker growing up. And it was also his comp on NFL.com and their scouting report. But Hill is a guy who's really a complete linebacker. He has prototypical size, 6'2", 240-ish. And then runs in the low 4.5s. I think he's 4.51 at the combine. Just kind of a freak athlete. Texas played him at the Mike linebacker position primarily over the last couple of years, and then would move him around to the edge as well on third downs occasionally because he is a very good pass rusher off the edge in addition to his normal linebacking duties. So. He was able to kind of line up all over the place, and I think that would be a potential use for him here with the Titans as well, just simply because they do need some speed off the edge. They added a big edge rusher in Keldrick Falk, but speed off the edge is something that they kind of need in that group, and Hill could provide that as well as, serving as their primary Mike linebacker. And this is a guy that showed up at Texas, was the starter by halfway through his true freshman season, was calling the defense by his true sophomore season. It was the, alpha leader of that group. And that was a Texas defense that was really good in 24 and 25. So I think he's going to be a big help to this group. And Saleh will be able to get the most out of him. I'm confident of that.
Mike, I know you liked the Titans selection of Carnell Tate at number 4 overall. We attempted to set expectations for Tate's rookie year yesterday, so let me get your opinion. What would you consider a successful rookie season for Carnell Tate, and how will you judge him in year 1?
I'd say if I'm looking to put a statistical number on it, I'd say, 900 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns would be, kind of a successful season. It's not going to blow you away, but that's a successful rookie season for a guy, who's 21 years old, one of the younger players in the class. And, but I think he's pretty pro ready. So as far as how I'll actually judge his season, I think a lot of it comes down to context. You have to be able to watch the games. Is he winning? Is he serving as a focal point for the offense? Because I think that's ultimately what they want him to be. And whether that happens right away or down the road, I think that'll tell you about how they feel about his development and how much they trust him. But I think that'll be kind of how I judge him. Just watching how he plays, how much they trust him early. And I think that'll be the kind of the tell on where his career may be going.
Now that the roster is more or less set for this coming season, do you think the Titans have done enough to help stimulate Cam Ward's development in year 2?
I think so. I think the offensive line, there's spots on the offensive line that are a question mark, obviously, and remain a question mark following the draft now. But if you look at what they did, I mean, they go out and they add one of the, probably 3 or 4 best receivers in free agency in Wan'Dale Robinson, the guy coming off a 1,000-yard season. They, add obviously the number 4 overall pick in Carnell Tate, who I think was pretty clearly the best wide receiver in this draft class. So they had 2, really high-end pass catchers. They were able to retain Ridley on a reduced deal, which I actually do think is pretty significant because a combo of Tate, Ridley, Robinson, throwing Gunnar Helm, you've got DK and Iomanner that you can rotate in, kind of on a matchups basis or just, trying to get different packages in there, especially for DK. I mean, that's a real wide receiving core, and a real group of pass catchers that they can go and win with, I think. So if they can protect him well enough, absolutely. I think they've done enough to give Cam Ward a fighting chance in his second season here.
We'll talk with Mike Herndon discussing the Tennessee Titans in their draft. Now, Mike, looking at the draft, and I know a lot of people were shocked, and me included, not necessarily that they drafted Cornell Tate, but at that position in the draft that they drafted him, that they took him instead of moving down. But do you think after sort of thinking about all of this, it was either Love or Tate in their mind? They were going to try to bolster their offense with either one of those guys. And if Love was there, they would take him. But if not, then they went with Tate. Do you think there was ever a true discussion, even until the last moments, of taking a defensive guy?
I think if David Bailey had been there, that may have been a discussion, just because I think he was pretty far and away the cleanest edge rush prospect in the draft. So I think maybe that would have been a discussion, but I think once the board fell the way it did, I think Tate was pretty easily the best option for them and kind of where they needed to go.
I thought you was going on. I'm sorry about that, Mike.
Sorry.
No. Now looking at what they did from a defensive standpoint, because again, you look at the last two drafts and what they added free agency. How do you think this team has positioned themselves moving into this season and beyond?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think they're going to be better without question. I think having a coaching staff that has a lot more experience and I think can only really go up from where the Callahan era left off is going to help tremendously as well. But I think you're looking at a team that now has a front seven that I think is a legitimate strength relative to other NFL teams. I mean, that front seven, especially if Hill and Falk are who they think they are, obviously, and who I think they are. Personally, I think that front seven could be one of the best front sevens in football. Like, maybe you're not getting past, 7, 8 on the list before you get to the Titans with everybody that they've added with, John Franklin Myers and, obviously the draft picks that they just brought in, Jermaine Johnson. I mean, they've added a lot of talent up front. And I think that's going to be a real strength. And then you look at the offense and Cam Ward going into year 2. He's now got, like we just talked about, some professional receiving core to throw to. I think this could be a real team that puts themselves in the conversation late in the season to maybe grab that last wild card spot or, win 9 or 10 games. I think that's absolutely in play.
Now, last year, no one would have pegged DK as a guy that would have had a breakout season and be a Pro Bowler. But he came in and he seemed to be more NFL ready than anyone, even the quarterback. Who's going to be, or who do you look at as the DK of this year's draft for the Titans? Outside of Cornell Tate. Let's say outside of the first round, Cornell Tate and Keldrick Falk.
Yeah. And I'll leave Hill off of that discussion too, because I think he's going to step in and play right away. But if we're looking at day 3 guys, I think, the two offensive linemen, Coogan and Carmona, both have a pretty clear path to to a playing time. And I mean, they've got some veterans to beat out, but that's certainly somebody that could win a role right away. And but I really like Singleton, Nicholas Singleton, the running back that they took in the 5th round. I mean, he is an absolute speed demon. He's got excellent receiving skills out of the backfield, which is I really think going to be his ticket to playing time this year. I think he could earn a 3rd down role pretty quickly, and I think he could be a guy that we look back at this time next year and think, okay, they got a guy who can project to be their starting running back next year potentially. So it'll be interesting to see how the running back room plays out. But I think Singleton's got a ton of upside. And I think that Penn State situation last year was a total mess. And if you looked at, kind of his production as a freshman and as a junior, especially, he would have gone much higher had he come out after last year, I think.
Mike Herndon is with us from paulkarski.com. Mike, Dave Ziegler, the assistant GM, had an interesting answer about why Tate was so unanimously the guy at 4. I'm curious about why do you think it wasn't Arvell Reese? Based on what he said, what do you deduce from that? Because I can remember when we first cracked open, this was probably back in January, the initial mock drafts, so many people had Reese as the number 1 guy on the list. So why were they so sure it wasn't him?
And I struggled with Reese this entire draft cycle and was lower on him than consensus. So, that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. But my problem with Reese was always, I thought he was the second best off-ball linebacker on his own team behind Sonny Styles, which, Styles is a great linebacker prospect. But if you're going to take an off-ball guy, I want the guy who provides, A-plus coverage in Styles more than the kind of wrecking ball in Reese. So I like Styles a little bit better as an off-ball player. And if you're projecting him to edge, Reese played 100-something snaps at edge. So you're projecting him to play a position he never played before. And look, it worked out for Micah Parsons. I don't know that that's going to happen all the time with these ultra-athletic linebacker prospects. That's not going to be every ultra-athletic 240-pound linebacker turns into Micah Parsons as an edge rusher in the pros. So I think I had a hard time with that projection with him. And I think ultimately maybe that was their hesitation there as well, that, hey, this is not a necessarily clean projection onto our system. And we'd rather just grab the receiver who is a clean projection and, probably is pretty close to the same level player.
As you size up the AFC South for right now, how much of a gap do you think the Titans may or may not have closed?
I think they've closed the gap. Jacksonville and Houston obviously had great seasons last year. And I don't think the Titans have necessarily put themselves in the conversation to win the division just yet. But would it shock me if they did next year? Not necessarily. I think, Houston's got offensive line problems. You look at Jacksonville and they had an odd draft themselves and maybe played a little bit above their level at times last season. So I think it'll be an interesting battle. I think they've caught the Colts is kind of where I'm at. I think if I'm looking at the AFC South, I've got kind of Houston and then maybe Jacksonville, Tennessee, Indy at this point. But I think they've definitely closed the gap with everybody and could surge past them here pretty shortly.
Mike Herndon of Paul Kaharski has been our guest on D-Mace, Vingan and Donick. Of course, you can catch Paul Kaharski himself on Robbie and Rex Road tomorrow morning. Mike, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for your insight. We'll catch up soon.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it, guys.
615-737-1025. One of my favorite things has come out now that the 2026 draft is over. And we'll discuss that coming up next, as well as some sad news. And not sad in a way that you're really going to be upset, but I'm a little PO'd about it. And we'll discuss that as well. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
Hey, if you lived in the Middle Tennessee area for any time, then you've seen the wild weather we can have here. From winter storms, tornadoes to flooding, we can see it all, or we have seen it all. Like many of you, the winter storms earlier this year caught me unprepared. I lost power for 7 days. That was 7 days being out of my house, 7 days in a hotel, 7 days worrying about whether my pipes were going to break. And I know each and every one of you that were in the same situation that I was in was thinking the same thing. But this time, listen, I'm not going to be caught off guard because not being prepared isn't optional. I will be ready the next time the weather emergency happens. I started looking for a whole house generator, and found Tri-State Water, Power, and Air. They've been in business for over 30 years, specializing in generators for more than half of those, which is all great. But the reason I reached out to them was because of the reviews and the confidence of other homeowners shared about their experience with Tri-State Water, Power, and Air. When Tri-State came over, They did a free on-site assessment, made sure that the generator fit my home for my family's needs. The one thing I appreciated the most was they didn't try to oversell me. They didn't try to give me a generator or a system bigger than what my house needed. Just straight answers. Turnkey. They handle everything, so you don't have to go to a third party, from installation to long-term service. If something ever goes wrong, I'm not calling around. I'm going to one call, and that's the Tri-State Water, Power, and Air, because they've got it covered. That's the kind of relationship I know you want, because that's the kind of relationship I have with them. So look, the weather isn't slowing down. Be ready. Call Tri-State Water, Power, and Air today and protect your home and your family. Find them at tristatewhywait.com. That's tristatewhywait.com.
D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The Game. Continuing to pull from Dianna Russini's playlist that was uncovered on Spotify from late 2022 that was sent to someone named Mike. We graded the playlist at the beginning of the show. If you missed it, you can find it wherever you find your podcasts. If you missed it, I do not like the playlist. There are too many playlist no-nos on that playlist from Dianna Russini to the Mike. We can only assume which Mike it is. Maybe it was Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com,
Yeah.
who just joined us.
In theory,
Mike
could be
Tyson.
anybody named Mike.
It could be Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan,
Yeah. Michael Myers.
Michael Myers, the comedian, or
Yes,
the serial
comedian.
killer.
Both.
Either.
Either, yes.
Mike from down the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's what I teased was making me sad and actually a little angry. It's been reported in multiple places that the men's and women's NCAA basketball tournaments are expected to formally pass approval for expansions to 76 teams.
Ooh.
Let's just
Man.
let's just invite everybody.
Participation trophy.
Let's invite the South Harmon Institute of Technology to the NCAA tournament. Just what we need. More mediocre to below average teams in the NCAA tournament. Matt Norlander of CBS reported that the opening round will be split between at-large and auto bids, expanding out current first four formats. All 16 seeds and half the 15s will be slotted into the Tuesday, Wednesday of the opening round. The other half will be a mix depending on team quality, 11s, 12s, and maybe a 13.
This is getting out of hand, Willie. This is getting out of hand. I mean, more is not always better or merrier. Okay. It's starting to get to a point where because when are they going to start? Now they've expanded it. Are they going to start earlier?
No, the plan is, according to ESPN,
or just play more
that
games,
the traditional
bunch of games.
64-team men's bracket will still begin on Thursday.
Mhm.
The major difference here will be more teams who qualify as traditional at-larges will have to play earlier in the 64-team bracket.
So they'll still do on the 2 days that we see the first four.
There'll just be more games.
There'll be
More games.
double that, right?
But postseason play, not just in the NCAA tournament. I'm talking about across all sports. Postseason play should be exclusive.
Mhm.
You need to have a great season to qualify for the playoffs. Look, you know how much I love hockey. Half the NHL makes the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't love that. To me, I think the number should be less than 50% in professional leagues.
So does strength of schedule mean anything now that you're adding more teams?
Yes, I'm
It's
sure
still-
it'll mean the same.
So the first
it
four,
has.
the first four out in this past year's NCAA tournament: Auburn, which won the NIT,
Mhm.
Oklahoma, San Diego State, and Indiana. Just what we need. Auburn, who went 17-16 in the regular season, with a 4-13 record in quad one games. Just what we need. We need them in the tournament.
Right. So they would have gotten in with strength of schedule.
Sorry, Auburn fans, but
And, give them credit. They turned around and won the NIT to pad their argument
and
a
the
little bit more.
NIT means a lot to you personally. I know this.
It does. It does. I have a ring. It's a nice ring.
Where is the ring?
It's in my house.
Is it on display?
No.
If it were an NCAA championship ring, would it be on display?
Oh, good question.
It'd be on his finger.
Yes, he would never take it off.
You occasionally see somebody wearing a big championship ring like that. I can't imagine
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that.
Unless you're
Wearing
towards
it
some
around.
function
Putting
or
it on
something.
display, maybe I'll just put that on display for you, Adam.
So
Okay.
that
I'll
means
just do
so this means you're going to get maybe 2 extra teams throughout the conferences.
Yeah,
2, maybe 3. Because you figure Auburn would have been in this year, and so there would have been another team in the SEC.
Well, you take the Oklahoma was one of the
Oklahoma,
first four
yes.
out, so Oklahoma gets in. Indiana's in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Right. I have no idea which conference San Diego State is in that.
Mountain West.
Mountain West. Okay. So the first four out: 2 SEC, 1 Big Ten, 1 Mountain West.
So on average, you'll probably get an extra team or two.
But there's 4 more on top of that.
Yeah.
Right? There's 76, right?
I couldn't find the next 4 out. I found the first
Yeah.
4 out. I could not find the next 4 out.
So, but there's 8 new spots, and that doesn't on paper seem like a lot. But I do wonder, like for the 8 teams that are going to try to grab those spots, there's going to be more teams that have a similar resume. So, like Joe Lunardi is going to have to work even that much harder, and you are going to get the teams that I just think are probably you want it to mean something to get to the tournament. Like I've always felt like that is the thing. Is even though they've gone to 68, I still feel like everybody who makes it is deserving of being there and has had a great season to get there.
Okay, let's say this because we did have arguments last year where who was it? Belmont. Was it Belmont or
Miami,
Belmont,
Ohio?
No.
Miami,
Belmont
Ohio.
lost. Who lost their conference championship game and couldn't make it? Which conference? Was
Well,
that?
Oh, Miami, you're talking about?
Miami, Ohio.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the one. Yeah.
Yeah. End up losing.
Belmont also won
Yeah.
their league with a much better rating than Miami of Ohio, but they lost in the first round of their conference tournament. So
and that's what I'm saying.
bowed
So,
out.
and that's what I'm saying. If you win your conference during the regular season, maybe this is for the teams that get into conference play. They are the best team in their conference because they prove it over the season. They lose in the first or second round, and then by the old rules, they're automatically out. And someone gets in that maybe, just not even better than them if you're just talking about the totality of the season.
But you know what?
So that gets that team in.
The teams with the higher budgets that can really pinpoint their non-conference schedule. And I heard Matt Painter, the head coach for Purdue, talk about this in a lot of detail, and I never really thought about it. But you can, if you budget correctly, if you pay, if you have the resources, you can schedule your way into a good strength of schedule / it's not the RPI anymore.
Net.
It's the net rating, right? The net rating is so big. And you see it a lot of times. It's very frustrating for teams that are trying to play catch up, but your net rating gets locked in. And if you're in that 36 to 40, you're going to be pretty safe and you're not going to free fall, even if you lose some games. And Matt Painter pointed out, schedule wise, if you schedule the right teams, you can schedule your way. Now you got to win a certain amount of games, but the Belmonts, the Miami Ohios, the teams that don't quite have that budget or the resources, they're going to have a harder time being able to schedule a rating that's going to get them over the hump. So I worry that it's going to be just the extra Big 10 team, the extra Big 12 team that's going to snag those spots and not the quote little guy.
I hate it. Okay. I hate it. I think postseason play should be exclusive. We don't invite everybody. That's what making the playoffs is about. You have to be good enough to make it. So I don't like any idea. I don't like expanded postseason play in any situation, but this makes me sad.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see.
What's that?
From the as a counter from the little conferences, I would put my team in. I would put my regular season team as the team that's got my automatic bid. If you want to play a conference tournament to see who the next best team is, if you think that could help a second team get in, do that. But I would take my champion. This would be controversial, but I would say if Belmont wins their league, if Tennessee State wins their league, if Austin Peay wins their league in the regular season, that's who I'm putting in the tournament. That's how I would do it.
But it should be that way. It's that way.
Well, they want the
it's
drama.
That way.
They want the conference tournament for the TV money and all that stuff. It would hurt that.
But if you look at conferences like the Big 10, Big 12, whatever, their conference champion minus the tournament, their conference champions are in. Even if they don't have a conference champion, if they don't have a tournament, their conference champion from the regular season is automatically in. And we don't think about it because we figure, well, they're going to have the SEC or the Big 10 tournament and say they win the tournament. But once they win the regular season, they're in.
Yeah. When's the last time the regular season champ of the SEC or the Big 10
never
wasn't in the? So it's a quasi automatic bid, and the smaller leagues don't have that.
I do want to talk about something now that the 2026 NFL draft is over. God bless all of the NFL draft analysts, because The 2026 NFL draft ended 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and they're already looking ahead to the 2027 draft.
Yes, they are.
Mhm.
And
That's what they do.
And I don't mean to pick on Dane Brugler here, who I think does a fantastic job for The Athletic, but he published his early 2027 NFL mock draft. And there's a lot of chatter about how this is one of the most anticipated classes in recent memory. Just for kicks and giggles, here is the top of Dane Brugler's early 2027 mock draft. Number 1, to the Arizona Cardinals, Arch Manning. Number 2, to the Miami Dolphins, Jeremiah Smith. Number 3, to the Cleveland Browns, Dante Moore. Number 4, to the New York Jets, Leonard Moore, cornerback, Notre Dame. And number 5, to the Tennessee Titans, Dylan Stewart, edge, South Carolina. And this is what I thought would be instructive. I went back and I found Dane Brugler's 2026 early NFL mock draft from April 29th, 2025. So 1 year ago tomorrow. And it's really interesting. For example, the number 6 overall pick in Brugler's 2026 way too early mock draft was Keldrick Falk, who was the number 31 overall pick to the Tennessee Titans. He was number 6 on this list. The number 12 overall pick in this draft, the Seattle Seahawks, Anthony Hill, who went number 60 overall to the Tennessee Titans. Carnell Tate, by the way, 13th in this mock draft from a year ago to the Miami Dolphins.
If that's not a great indicator of how a player's pathway, every player's pathway goes in different directions. It's anything but a straight line, right? And, there's ways that people do it now. They redraft after a year, after 2 years, after 5 years. But it's a great example of why you can't get so wrapped up in, hey, why did they take Carnell Tate 4? Everybody had him at 7. Why? How could you possibly do that? It really doesn't matter after they start playing. I keep making this point. It's like with Corey Davis. Everybody's like, but he was the 5th pick in the draft. He was, and it's going to chase Cam Ward as the quote first pick in the draft. But once you're drafted, you're drafted.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can play, you can play. And so I think it's a fun exercise to do. I've never seen it. I've never done what you just did and go back a couple years. And, it'd be fun to go back 3 years to see what they had.
Let's look at Keldrick Falk. So in his 2026 early mock draft, which was published a year ago, Dane Brugler of The Athletic had Keldrick Falk going number 6 overall to the Carolina Panthers. Here's what Brugler wrote about Falk at the time. Quote, "It was impossible to ignore Falk and his ability to disrupt the quarterback and stuff the run when studying the Auburn Cal tape from last season. Listed at 6'6" and 288 pounds with long arms, Falk, according to scouts, will be in the conversation to be the first defensive lineman drafted next year. Keep that in mind." Here's what Brugler, the very same, wrote about Falk in his draft guide before this year's draft. Quote, Falk has more, quote unquote, almost plays than impact ones on this tape. But you bet on a developing 21-year-old player with his exciting traits. The character and upside are promising, but how early a team drafts him is dependent on its appetite for risk. That's the same player being written about one year apart.
Yeah.
That's so it's fascinating when you think about it. So what do you like? I could make an argument that doesn't bode well for Falk.
That's what I thought.
But I could also make an argument that, hey, look, it's the same guy with the same traits. For whatever reason, he just didn't have the great production, but it doesn't mean he couldn't bounce back and be great. And he's super young for relative, right? This was his first year to be eligible to be drafted. So he's going to be coming in as a young rookie, which I think should be noted.
I think year and year, that's why I know they do it, for just giving people a heads up on potential prospects that you should be looking out for, to get people familiarized with the player. But football season, it changed from year to year, and players change from year to year, and situations change from year to year. That's why, when you put these grades on these young men the year prior and where they're going to be drafted, it's like, man, you got to almost wait until, the season starts, to really get an assessment on who these guys are. Because, for instance, you have a guy that may be ranked in the top 5 the year prior, and they fired a coach, or he chooses to transfer. That changes the dynamics of his potential development. And then you come around the next draft period, and it's, oh, you said this guy was going to go 5th overall. He ended up going in the bottom half of the first round. Not to say he's still not a good player, but it's hard to get a beat on how these kids are going to develop.
I think you go to other sports, right? This is why the NHL draft is so maddening sometimes, because everybody's 18 when you draft them. So they could go, we don't even have the 3 college years to see how they grow. You have to take them right then and there, which is fraught with all kinds of risk. But I'll use baseball. The 2 most dominant major league pitchers last year, Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens, who still might be the most dominant 2 pitchers this year. Neither of them were guys that anybody was really looking to draft when they were 18, and neither was a major college recruit in baseball. Skeens turned into that, but Skeens went to Air Force to be a catcher when he was 18, and now he's the most dominant pitcher in Major League Baseball. So I don't think anything's different about the other sports. They're the same way. So when you get mad at a team for not being able to draft, it is a little tougher than you think sometimes.
I thought the differences in how Brugler wrote about Keldrick Falk year over year was pretty remarkable.
That's unbelievable. That's amazing.
Same player.
To read. Yeah.
615-737.
And then what version of the Titans getting this coming year? That's all that matters.
That is true. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to that. Any and everything is on the table as we wrap up the show. Next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick 102.5 the game. Again, I cannot see Mike Vrabel under any circumstances listening to Papa Roach. I just
but he was
can't.
25.
I know.
You can't see him like in the Ohio State locker
That's
room
what
or
I'm saying.
I
can
as a
see
young
it.
member of the Patriots.
I can see it.
I
Oh,
can't.
was
definitely.
Was he on the Steelers before the
He was
Patriots?
the Steelers, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Kansas City?
He played for Cowher, didn't he?
I think
one
Cowher
point.
drafted him, went to
I think the
Kansas City.
Patriots traded him to the Chiefs late in his career. I think he started with the Steelers, if I'm remembering this.
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, right. He started with the Steelers. So he went to the
He played for the Steelers from 1997 to 2000.
Okay, so 2000.
Yeah.
That's when Papa Roach came out with this song.
Exactly.
Yes.
Definitely.
And so
yeah.
when did he go to the Patriots?
In 2001.
Okay.
He was
Okay.
there from 2001 through 2008.
So a 25-year-old Mike Vrabel could have been jamming out to Papa Roach.
Definitely.
If he wasn't, then some of his teammates were probably.
Maybe he was there and also listening to it, but I can't imagine him being the one. Hey, put on the Papa Roach.
Oh,
Why
he
not?
came in with the Papa
I-
Roach,
I
man.
just-
He
Come
might
on.
be able. He might have been that
Yeah,
guy.
he came in with the Papa Roach.
I just can't get there. Maybe I'm wrong.
He
You
was
don't think he
listen-
had angst? Like I think he
He
had.
was
angst.
listening. He was listening to it on game day, coming up to the stadium.
I think he had angst as he was hounded by that random reporter
Oh,
at the
man.
airport.
He was holding in the angst. He did a good job of that. He did a good job not
TMZ
flinching.
put out the video.
Oh,
but
That's just
jeez.
like, whew.
look,
The
he's
loser
look,
guy.
you reap what you sow.
Hey,
You
you
reap
brought
what
it
you
upon
sow.
yourself.
That dude followed him all the way through the airport to the car.
He was not letting him go.
He was like Mr. Vrabel. Eddie,
I know he's trying to be as polite.
do you
as
feel like the
possible, yeah.
Patriots so have your back, Mr. Vrabel? Oh man.
Oh well.
But before the break, we were looking back. We were talking about Dane Brugler's way too early 2027 mock draft. Then I pulled up his way too early 2026 mock draft to see how right he was. Now I've pulled up his way too early 2025 mock draft, published April 30th, 2024.
Now this is going to blow your mind.
This is going to blow your mind. This was Dane Brugler in April of 2024, following the conclusion of the 2024 draft, trying to predict the 2025 draft, the Cam Ward draft, 1 year out.
All right, so this would be the draft or the college football season where I'm trying to think who the national champ was in 2024. The conclusion of that season. Was it Michigan? Was that Harbaugh's Michigan team?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
20 that was Ohio State. Ohio State
but-
won in 2024.
Okay.
So okay, Ohio State, Michigan, and then obviously Indiana.
Michigan won in 2023. Michigan won the 2023 college football.
Okay, but
championship.
the
But it was- but it
the
was in the
draft is
year.
2024.
Yeah, the year was
So
2024.
it was
Okay.
coming off of Michigan's win.
This is
in
why
the
this
spring
is
of
all,
24.
this
I
is
know,
so
no, I
confusing.
shouldn't have thrown that into the mix, but just as a reference point.
Yes.
So Cam Ward was a quarterback at Washington State that season.
Yes.
Had not transferred to Miami yet. Carson Beck was the quarterback at Georgia
Yes.
that year.
So again, in April of 2024, following the conclusion of that draft, Dane Brugler of The Athletic published what he thought the 2025 draft would look like 1 year out. With the number 2 pick in that draft, according to Dane Brugler, the Tennessee Titans select Carson Beck.
Wow.
Carson Beck, by the way, drafted in the 3rd round this weekend to the Arizona Cardinals. Cam Ward, not found. Cam Ward, not in the 1st round of Dane Brugler's way too early 2025 mock draft.
And I think Carson Beck's, I think his stock was dropping even before the injury that he had in the playoffs. I think his stock was sort of dropping before that because he was inconsistent.
But I don't think he had gotten injured that year. He got injured the next
The
year
next year, yeah.
in the SEC championship game and then transferred to Miami. His path is really interesting to follow because I do think for a while people thought he was definitely
yeah.
going to be that guy.
And he turned out not to be. And then you throw in the shoulder injury he had. His stock just started to plummet. But then on the other side, Cam Ward wasn't even on the list of potential 1st round picks. And lo and behold, he's the number 1 pick in the draft. So that's how this thing is like a pendulum. It can go from one side to the other very quickly.
Here are some notable names in this 2025 1 year out mock draft from Dane Brugler. Number 1 pick, Mykel Williams, defensive lineman from Georgia. Carson Beck, number 2. Abdul Carter, number 7. Travis Hunter, number 9. Ted McMillan, number 11. Quinn Ewers, number 14.
Wow. And Quinn
But
Ewers, he got
imagine a
drafted in
world,
what,
imagine,
fifth round?
imagine a world where Carson Beck was the Titans' top pick in 2025. Imagine a world.
Man. Well, we would have hoped he would have developed into an elite franchise quarterback. So
You know what caught me too, what you said about his current one that he just put out. Dane Brugler put out next year's, right? He's now
Yes.
trying to predict who will be the top guys next year to watch. He's got Dante Moore from Oregon as a top 5 guy.
Top 3, I
Top
think.
3.
yeah.
So all he's saying is basically everything that had him stay at Oregon this year, if he stays another year, he will become a top 3 pick.
His top
that says
3,
a lot about
Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith, Dante Moore.
And I think we would all agree Arch Manning's got a long way to go before he really looks the part of a guy that's going to be picked that high, right? And there's confidence, there's belief that he could get there in a year, and he's a little younger, right? But Moore, that's surprising to me.
Moore, his last outing wasn't good in college in the playoffs. It was bad. And that was one reason why I think, because there still was some questions on whether, how would he translate, considering, the competition he played against, and Oregon was always blowing somebody out.
And that was Oregon losing to Illinois.
Exactly.
I mean, not Illinois, Indiana. I'm sorry.
And they
Indiana.
just made him look
In the semifinal.
extremely bad. And I know after that game, it was like, okay, I need to stay in another year because I am absolutely not ready. So, these things change in a matter of games, or in a matter of years, whether, the projection I had on you stays the same or get better or worse.
One texter, Travis, says, Adam, who is the player in the NFL who looks like they are a metalhead? I have the perfect answer for you. Have either of you seen Jennings Dunker?
Nah.
First of all, his name is Jennings with a G, Gennings. His last name is Dunker, Dunker. Iowa guard, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 3rd round. I'm about to show the two of you a picture of Jennings Dunker.
Am I going to say to myself, yes, that looks like a Jennings Dunker?
Yes. Are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2,
give it
3.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yep, that's Jennings Dunker.
Like that's Jennings Dunker.
It's like he looks like he should be on an Adam Sandler's movie.
Let's describe Jennings Dunker for those of us who can't. For those of you who can't,
he would be one of his boys.
Before the days where you could actually go on YouTube and see the people talking on the radio, back in the day, I used to get this a lot, and I still do occasionally. Somebody will recognize my voice or something, maybe hasn't ever seen me, and say, "Hey, I recognize your voice." And I used to get this a lot more. You don't really look like you sound on the radio. And really, when you think about it, how would you ever know what the person sounds like on the radio? They used to be like the great mystery of radio. You wonder what the person talking on the other end looks like, he or she. But Jennings Dunker, he looks like you would.
Let's describe Jennings Dunker. He has an epic red mullet.
Ooh.
Epic is the
epic,
nice.
Epic ginger mullet.
Thick
mullet.
We're talking.
We got some serious rise.
Yes.
He's getting a couple, 2 or 3 inches in the height department.
Oh yes,
we're talking.
That thing's like a Roman helmet, boy.
We're talking Kenny. We're talking Kenny Powers here.
Extreme Kenny Powers.
He's also got half sleeve tattoos on both arms. Nice mustache. This dude, total metalhead.
He should be hanging out with Kelsey. Yeah.
They could.
He and Kelsey would be good buddies.
By the way, Travis has looked up Jennings Dunker and he says, sold. I told you. Absolutely. That'll do it for us today. We had fun. We hope you did as well. We will be back tomorrow. We'll continue the conversation about the Titans, the Predators. Who knows what Mike Vrabel story is going to come out between now and 3 o'clock tomorrow. Maybe we will have our obligatory 3 o'clock Mike Vrabel segment. We'll all find out together. But we'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful day. I love you. The team loves you. You hear that music? Don't you forget about us, because we will not forget about you. Be safe out there, because it's going to rain. So stay in if you don't need to go out. But we will see you, and you will listen to us tomorrow at 3 p.m. on 102.5 The Game. Peace.